Hello everyone. This is going to be very different from my normal videos because I had to change video editor. I will not explain in this video why I did it. Maybe I'll explain it on a different video or a community post. And no, this is not my real voice. A long time ago, LumBee asked this.
I can't tell what's going on. Everybody looks like a Marine. Okay, I ask this question every time I play a war game, but like, isn't it really hard to tell like who's who on the battlefield? There's gotta be a lot of friendly fire.
I briefly gave an explanation of it, but I've been wanting to revisit it with more detail. There are two ways of avoiding friendly fire. One is formations. Two is communications. Most people think that formations are an easy way of avoiding friendly fire, but it's actually still difficult. Formations are often a straight line, or an L shape, to avoid friendly fire. Historically, formations are often infantry lined up in the middle, while more fast units, such as cavalry, will protect the flanks or attack the enemy by flanking. Ranged units are often at the back. More complex formations require more coordination and discipline, but also raises risks. Ranged units need to coordinate with the infantry to avoid friendly fire. An example of coordination of infantry and ranged units are creeping barrage. Imagine needing to capture a trench line. Trenches and bunkers are made to resist against artillery. When fired upon by artillery, infantry will hide in their bunkers and wait for it to end before quickly running back to their positions to mow down anyone trying to advance. A creeping barrage is a line of artillery fire that slowly creeps to the enemy positions so that the infantry can get close to the enemy positions and take over. This needs to be timed well because the charging infantry might get hit by artillery, or the enemy gets back to their defensive positions. Another version of the creeping barrage is when the line of artillery actually creeps back to kill the enemy that rushed back to their defensive positions. Let's say that your units are assembled to form a line. You would need to relieve them before they get tired or lose morale. It is easy to order the units at the front to shoot anyone in front of them, but relieving them is risky and requires a lot of time, coordination, and trust. One way of doing it is to slowly move small amount of people over time. This is tedious and would delay their much-needed rest and further delay them from reconstituting. The other way is for the forwardmost units to secretly abandon their defensive positions before moving in new units. This is often done at night or while the enemy is distracted. The frontmost units need to have good communications with the units that are supposed to relieve them so that they won't be mistaken as enemy units. This entire operation sometimes backfires because the enemy can attack while doing this. Both Russia and Ukraine make this mistake during their current war. I don't think anyone knows if this actually happens to Ukraine more often, because it's not like Russia would admit it when it happens to them, and Ukraine doesn't have the people or resources to take advantage of it anyways. Telling ground units to form a line and shoot at anything in front of them is not applicable to air defenses. This is because most of the targets they need to shoot down can maneuver. These are missiles, drones, aircrafts, and balloons. Yes, balloons can sometimes be used in war. They can be used to carry weapons, sensors, and be decoys. Let's move on to communications. There are various ways to communicate during war. Knowing what everyone is doing and where they are is necessary to avoid friendly fire. The most simple way of communicating whose side they are on is appearance. Examples are colors, symbols, and flags. There are probably more, but I can't think of any. Flags were more important back then for communications. It not only shows what side they are on, but it also shows where to rally around and who is still alive. If the flag of the leader is down for too long, units would assume that their leader is dead and would rout. This is also why the standard in Space Marine 2 was so important. However, I don't know if the standard is even necessary in 40K. Standards aren't used anymore in the real world because they are easy targets, and there are better means of communications. More forms of communication is music, speaking, messengers, and various electronic means of communication, and IFF. Musical instruments are used during war to boost morale, intimidate enemies, and communicate. My favorite musical instruments during war is the bagpipes. I may not like the music, but I like this story.
The Piper from The Longest Day is a tribute to Lovett's piper, Bill Millen, who played for his men under fire. Here is testimony as to one way he survived.
Well, I was at the head of the brigade, and going along the main roads here, there's quite a lot of sniper fire. Many of the commanders were killed, many wounded, and luckily enough I was never hit. But we did capture some Germans later, and through an interpreter, one was asked, why didn't they shoot at the Piper, making all that noise and being up front? And the German looked rather strangely at the officer and said he thought he was a bit dummkopf. But I was treating that he meant it in a nice way.
A surprising fictional example of musical instruments during war is this dude from Mad Max Fury Road. He surprisingly makes sense. Speaking seems like a straightforward means of communication, but it has multiple problems. 1, its range is limited. 2, can be drowned out by noises. 3, can be misheard, for it needs to be standardized to avoid misunderstandings. 5, difficult to use in an army that speaks multiple languages and thick accents. Accents can be a notable advantage during war. Here is the only example I know of.
Shortly after this, Japan attacks Pearl Harbor. They've committed the cardinal sin. They've fucked with America's boats. It is now game on. At this point in time, John's unit is one of the most highly trained units in the United States military, and they are immediately shipped out to Samoa on their way to the Pacific for more training. They spend about 4 months there. They train a bunch on amphibious landings, but they also train on jungle warfare, trying to focus in on what they know the Japanese like to do. They know that the Japanese like night fighting, so they get a bunch of nighttime combat training, and then they know that the Japanese also like to infiltrate behind enemy lines and pretend to be one of your guys and then murder you in your sleep, so they develop a new system on how to make sure that somebody out in the darkness is actually one of your guys. Now, the tricky part is you need to make sure that both members in this communication are both on the same page and they both know that they're not going towards an enemy, so you're going to shout out one word and they're going to respond back with another word that's the password. And the words that they choose are weather and clear, because apparently you can't say those words with a Japanese accent.
Clear, 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 clear. Clear, clear, clear.
Messengers are living things like messenger pigeons or some dude on horseback. They can't be jammed, but they are slow, can get lost, captured, or killed. Some human messenger in the past have changed their message to avoid getting killed by the people they are supposed to deliver the message to. That is probably rare. Then the last part is various electronic means of communication, and IFF. I don't think I need to explain anything about that other than it usually encrypted and sometimes jammed.
Нахуй пошел, что тут непонятно? Ребята, не занимайте круговую оборону, лучше сдавайтесь сразу, вам всем пизда! Ебало, сука, у тебя, чтоб ты понял, сейчас потихоньку джавелинами накроем вас, к ебаной матери! Тебе в жопу засунь, пидор ебаный! Это ты, пидор ебаный, ты на моей земле, там, блядь, будешь, сука, и кормить червей, гандон ты ебаный! Хлебало забей ты, ублюдок, ты хуйло, блядь, брянское!
People and vehicles can have on them electronic devices that can passively or actively show their ID. This is especially important for air defense. A channel called Habitual Line Crosser made a short video of this topic. I will leave a link in the description for you to click on, because he can explain it better than I can. LumBee, if you're watching this, please give me high-resolution image of the Phase Wars models. I especially need Team Blaze for a parody. One more thing, please ask Pippa to do read-along of solo farming in the dungeon. There's literally a bee that grows up to be a sexy and curvy queen bee that looks too much like you.
Oh my god, it's LumBee!
That's all for now. Please don't bother to subscribe because this isn't my normal content. Feel free to look around to see if you'll like what I normally do.